The Hail Varsity Radio Saturday morning show. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now, roll tide.
And Mark Kraynak.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Welcome to it. Weekend editions here. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. And as always, on the Hail Varsity YouTube channel, Hail Varsity Radio Twitter, KFOR Facebook, KFOR Twitter, Chris Schmidt, Mark Kraynak. With it says in the bug, I disagree. Then there's Elijah Herbel back in studio. Fellas, how we doing? It's not quite as cozy as last Saturday at the Single Barrel, where we were all packed in. A great time at the Single Barrel. Always love seeing the listeners come by and hang out, and it's been a staple for us. Game days, we saw a fun spring game atmosphere, saw lots of young talent perform, and you know what? Nebraska's done a good job and will continue to do a good job of, I'm not saying tempering fan expectations, but they're gonna try and manage the hype. Good luck, because a lot of Nebraska fans left Memorial Stadium smiling. We'll get to some Nebraska baseball news today. Survived in Minneapolis against the Gophers. Kind of a slugfest last night, but they are 1-0 after the no-no. And then Husker volleyball news, and it's not the best Husker volleyball news. We'll get there as well. Kraynak, how are you, dude? Good to see you again.
It's doing great. It's good to see you all, too. And yes, Elijah.
I have been waiting all week, not to derail you. I've been waiting all week to hear Mark Kraynak's take on the spring game, so we'll get to that here in just a second. No pressure, Mark, but I've been waiting all week.
Have you really?
Oh, actually, like
a quarter-by-quarter breakdown?
Because we were
going to trank dart you and drag you into the studio Monday.
Yeah. Well,
it may have been extreme.
I mean, and not to take the peek behind the curtain. By the point we get to Wednesday, there's that all right, how can we hit the spring game in a different angle? You know who's always great at hitting the talking points in a different angle? One Mark Kraynak.
There you go. Well, I can tell you that we sat by all the recruits or all the incoming freshmen, like in the family.
Hold on.
Yeah.
All the recruits and the incoming freshmen got to sit by Kraynak and Jr. Let's phrase this the right way.
Right. I kept a low profile, though. Right. I didn't wear a lanyard or anything like
the true Pied Piper of Nebraska recruiting is one Mark Kraynak.
That's the thing, man. All these recruits and incoming freshmen. They were just you can tell they were so arrogant. They had to wear a lanyard to let everybody know who they were. I didn't. I'm like, guys, would you just keep a low profile? I'm just kidding. They were issued the lanyards. They had to. They all sat in a group. I sat right next to Rowdy Bauer.
Good name. All name team.
You know who that is? He's a walk-on, I believe, from Norfolk. Mm-hmm. And he's super athlete, wrestling and track and everything else. Didn't mention anything though, right? I didn't want to what are you gonna do? So you come play football here? I felt like I would have been I don't know. I just didn't have anything to say. And they were kind of moving all around. They were with their families and stuff. But I will tell you, some impressive looking athletes are on board here. So we were pretty close, right? We were it's seventh row, round 50-yard line. So pretty good view of all the action. Ja'Cory Barney is God. Can we just go ahead and admit that? I mean, besides Omar Manning's calves, has there been a more impressive specimen at receiver in a while? No, there has not. He looked like the real deal.
I was not expecting an Omar's calves reference here on a Saturday morning. This is great.
Well, God, they those things don't expire for another
pictures.
Decade.
There are pictures.
Did we ever get that portrait of Omar's calves hung up in your bathroom? Weren't we going to do that?
Ceiling.
Ceiling.
No, I'm just kidding.
Oh no.
Well, so there's him. God, who else really stood out? I mean, obviously Raiola did. How about Harburg too? Right?
Yes.
Harburg, everybody had just thrown him out like he's like Old Yeller almost, right? It's just like, no, you don't take him behind the don't take him behind the shed. He's not done yet. He's not. And Kalen looked fairly impressive as well.
You look poised, man.
Yeah, so I feel okay about the quarterback position, but you do wonder because they're in green jerseys. There was a time that Raiola completed one that he definitely would have been sacked. And I don't know what the defender was doing. He was just sort of like, he just kind of like waved at him and ran by, and it was just like, oh, okay. And then here's the other thing, the prediction. And this isn't to call the guy out because, hey, he's only going into his sophomore year and a lot can change. But remember when Dowdell signed and everybody's like, well, there's your starter Heisman, probably the Heisman. I'm like, well, Emmett Johnson's still the best running back on the team. And I don't know why nobody wants to admit it. Why does everybody hate Emmett?
I don't think they do. I think there's a lot of fanfare. You're just waiting to see Nebraska's run game be consistent. And you didn't see that a lot. You didn't see a lot last year just because of they were so inept. I mean, what they wanted to do versus what they had to do are two completely different things on offense, and we know how anemic it was. That's the biggest thing, guys, that you're excited about, and I think a lot of the fans are excited about. We'll get to the starting five, our shout-outs here in the stream in a moment, but you've got what looks like capable, functioning, talented offense moving forward with two trigger guys you feel comfortable with, and it's not that you don't feel comfortable with Kalen, but walking away from Saturday, you were super impressed by Dylan, and you were super impressed by the new Harburg, right? As a thrower, not an option quarterback.
Yeah.
Within the framework of the offense, and then you laid out all the skill dudes. I mean, Nair had a good day. Barney was nice.
Can we stop at Nair for a second? That dude moves like, at his size, the way he moves is different than anything than Nebraska's had in a while. I think it's more like you have to think back to like a Nunwa kind of style. You know what I mean? Like he's a lot bigger than I thought he'd be. First of all, and that dude gets upfield. He gets upfield in a hurry.
And I know he had the knee injury he was coming off of, but like, how good was Texas's wide receiver room last year if that dude was riding the pine all year long? Like, Adonis Mitchell, I know they're good, and they had the dude who ran 4.21 at the combine. Like, I understand they had a very talented wide receiver room, but my God, like, they were impressed.
Yeah.
And it should be noted, you also had a guy in Banks that essentially had the day off. Coleman essentially had the day off. Like, there were guys that just were not a go in the spring game, and it gave more opportunities to guys like Lloyd and Naor. But, like, let's remember, there's more guys that we didn't necessarily see in the spring game that could also be those same kind of game changers.
I'd be shocked if Naor isn't I mean, he's obviously one of your top three. He has to be. And even on the play that got called back along the east sideline, you remember what I'm talking about? I can't remember what it was. I think there was like a block in the back or something that brought it back. But as he's coming up, where it looked like about 3 times he would have been corralled, and nope, he was not about to get corralled. It's just the amount of momentum that he creates when running. He sort of has like it's almost like a running back that has, that's just very physical, and you just kind of don't want to get in his way. That's how he ran it, and that's rare at receiver. You don't see that at receiver a lot. That's a big dude that could really move. And then also tied in, Fedoni's out there head hunting. I don't know. I just thought that and then you mentioned Jalen Lloyd, and it's not like he does a lot of jukey stuff. It's not like he turns short gains into big gains, but what he does is he gets like 5 yards of separation downfield, and he makes the damn catch every time. It's deep throw. He's like Willie Gault, right? He gets downfield, gets open, and is super fast. I just thought the amount of weaponry that they have. I hope I'm not being too bullish here because it's the spring game. I understand it, but like when you look across the way, I think these are players that have measurable speed and measurable size and measurable quickness, measurable experience. Nair's not a spring chicken. Fedoni's been in the program now for 4 some years. Lloyd's coming into his second year. I don't know, man. I came away like they could be something in the air for the first time in a minute. And then you got Emmett, and if you bring in Ramir back, you get Gabe Irvin off the shelf at running back. Like, I don't see how they're going to be under 20 points a game like they were last year.
The way they do that is through sacks and turnovers, right? I mean, let's just call it the way they don't
take care of the ball.
Yeah, the way they don't make a big step is if the better turnover and handle on the football that we saw Saturday, 8 turnovers in the first spring game, 2 turnovers in 97 plays last Saturday. I mean, that's encouraging. With Nebraska on offense, Elijah and I touched on this week, but Raiola hit on it during his media appearance kind of midway through the spring. You know, he was asked about big plays. He's like, well, yeah, I mean, and there's been some shots downfield. There's been some gash plays for sure. And you're going to have that option with Lloyd because that's all that guy does is make big plays downfield. And that's the highlight for me was the throw to Lloyd into the wind.
Oh,
and it was a perfect drop in the bucket, 64-yarder. That was just gorgeous. It was awesome. I mean,
it was about 45 yards in the air in the bucket.
Perfectly placed. Yep. It was like watching, Palmer. And
then was it a 2-point conversion? Or was it a touchdown thrown to
Bullock caught the 2-pointer that was perfectly. It was like an alley-oop. That's how perfect the throw was.
I'm thinking of the one to the kid that was turned into a fullback, and then now he's kind of back at receiver.
Bonner. You're thinking of the first touchdown.
Oh, yeah. Bonner's lob. Yeah.
Right? It's just like the level of passing, like the sophistication of the passes, right? Where it's like, yeah, there's a guy open, and a lot of people can see a guy open, and a lot of people have a strong arm and could maybe deliver it there, but they'd probably get picked, or it'd get incomplete, or it'd get batted down. But Raiola just seems to be processing things a little bit differently where he's like, okay, I need to put this ball at an angle of 46 degrees where it drops about 14 miles an hour into like he's calculating things.
Well, Mark, you need to see our friend Brian, he came and visited us at the Single Barrel last week. He had probably the best view in the stadium for that throw to Bonner. If you're listening at home, you haven't seen this, Schmidt has it up on his Twitter. Mark, you don't have Twitter, so I don't think you've seen this. A fantastic view from the back corner of the end zone of that perfect Raiola throw to Bonner. I don't think you can get a better angle. Brian got lucky. That was like the first play he saw as they're walking in the stadium was that throw to the corner of the end zone. He's in the perfect place for it, and he sent the video off to Schmidt. It's up on
Shout out
Twitter.
Brian.
Great. Shout out Brian.
That was great. What you're going to see though, and you saw this from Fedoni, you saw this to Nair. It's a lot in this offense. What you can do with the yak yards. I mean, it's awesome. It could be awesome where you throw a quick little 4-yard flat out to a tight end or a slot guy. You get downfield blocking, and a 4-yard catch turns into 15 to 17 to 20 yards. And that's just keeping it simple with where you're going with your passing. It's not always having to 3rd and 8, throw it up. Let's see if Lloyd's down there, right? Kind of like Nebraska did, feast or famine, boom or bust with Palmer in the Whipple era, right? With Casey throwing deep. So when it worked, it was great. Indiana and Iowa, it was wonderful, but it was all or nothing a lot of times. And I don't think that's how this offense is going to be. They're going to be able to get 4 or 5 on first down, do what the hell they want on second. So it's 3rd and short, and they can, out of a 1-back set, 3-wide formation, slam it between the tackles for some running, control the ball, be physical. But also what you have in Dillon is that mobility. I mean, there's been a lot of Mahomes chatter, not only because of that's who he's going to go work with this summer, but just the mannerisms, the look, the touch. You don't want to make unfair parallels here, but I mean, don't kid yourself. That's who Dillon loves to model his game after.
Yeah.
And if you get
he has the same private instructor for crying.
Yeah. And if you get a smidgen of that ability and that intelligence,
yeah,
because you've already got a lot of maturity. I mean, you've got a really talented phenom.
He's more mature than we are, guys. Like,
right.
at a very young age, he's got a little more figured out than we do, I think, and that's good.
Sure, no, that's
a good thing. That's what you want in your quarterback.
That's super important. But no, the sky's the limit, and we'll see where Nebraska can go. And you look at some of the early projections on Nebraska as we bring in Brandon Vogel from Counter Read, and Vogues has already started out on his team profiles for Counter Read with Nebraska's 2024 schedule. Vogues were just revisiting reliving's a better word, revisiting some of the wow of Nebraska's offense in spring game, and of course heaping too much praise on it as we let our imaginations run wild for this 2024 season. But the topic I like to get into is that it team, that trendy team, that breakthrough team, right? And you're going to have your college football talking heads moving forward. Greg McElroy, ESPN podcaster, and of course, college football analyst, loves Nebraska's breakthrough/giant step potential because of the steps they've taken with their offense. And we'll turn it over to you for a second here, and can be tempered, absolutely, but can also be excited with just some of the little things Nebraska did. Those 4-yard catches that turn into 17-yard gains. I mean, this offense could be really fun to pair with a good defense, presumably. And the I don't like Sat train could actually stop on the tracks because the guy's got a lot to work with this year as a play caller.
Yeah, it does. I mean, Nebraska, I think, based on the spring game, certainly upgraded its passing game, which it absolutely had to do. The run game, they stuck with it last year. It wasn't all that effective, but it was kind of what they the sharpest tool in the shed that they had.
It's like milk a clock.
Given some injuries and things like that, and also paired with the defense that Nebraska was playing last year, that made a lot of sense. So now, taking the next step is, hopefully you have a similar defense, which, Nebraska has the returning production, I think, it leads me to believe there's not going to be a major drop off, might even be improved. And if you pair that with an improved offense, which would primarily be more efficient in the passing game. I mean, even if we look at Heinrich Harburg, if he's Nebraska's starter in 2024, he's better than he was a year ago. So you can start there. He's better. The receiving core, I think, is significantly better. And beyond that, you start talking about, what if it's one of the other quarterbacks, and that offers even more upside. That's kind of all the things we're looking at going into summer. So Nebraska, it has all the markers of being one of those trendy offseason teams. And it may put some people off to call it trendy, and I get that. There's some real reasons there. It's the experience returning. It's a little bit of what we think the schedule looks like now, and it's some of these factors we're talking about in terms of just the roster upgrades. And then now that the portal is closed, you can add. They pulled off the retention part of it too, which I was maybe the most skeptical about.
Brandon, we got our first look at multiple players, obviously. Give me the two out of dudes you had never seen before, offense or defense, that really just jumped off the screen to you and were really impressed. Raiola doesn't count. Raiola, sorry. He's obviously one of them, but he doesn't count.
Yeah. Hadn't seen before. Let's see. Well, I mean, I'd seen him at Wyoming, so I don't know if that counts. But Nayor, even in limited action, I think on Saturday, we didn't get our best look at him, but I still thought he was a guy who kind of jumped off a little bit, jumped off the screen, I guess, in this case. I mean, in 2022, before he tore his ACL, I think in Texas's first scrimmage of fall camp, he was going to start. And that team had Xavier Worthy on it, first-round draft pick this year, and they had another guy, Jordan Whittingham, I think, who was drafted in after 2022. So, I mean, and this was, Texas that was on its way to making the playoff last year. So Ian Boyd runs a great Substack called America's War Game. It's about football. He's based in Texas. So
That's such
he
a great
often has
name.
a lot of good insight. Yeah, it is. He has a lot of great insight on Rule from his time at Baylor, but also on Texas. He had a great story this week talking about he is super high on Nayor, a guy who's done this for a long time. And then, who else? I mean,
you get one other pick. It's basically like, imagine it's like Brandon. Okay, you're captain. You're on the playground. You picked Nayor. Somebody else just picked somebody. Rayola. Who's your second pick to?
You can also argue it's like he's the GM of the Old Gold Knights or the Bug Eaters or any of the Spring League teams.
Yeah.
Bogues has a very GM look every time we go to him in his football office. I love
It's
it.
the analytics.
Yeah.
I mean, I liked what I saw from Dowdell. Again, kind of a guy who's been out there recently. It was a little splash, I guess. God, I feel like I'm forgetting an obvious one.
Maybe does his name rhyme with Akori Arnie?
there we go.
Just trying to.
Yeah. Not just, I mean, the long touchdown catch that Ja'Cory had, and then, I mean, I know a lot of people pointed this out in the time, but the one where the 13-yard gain where he took a pretty monster hit, like that's big time stuff for a first semester true freshman. So I think he certainly backed up that he's going to play.
Yep.
It's Brandon Vogel with us from counterread.com. We meant to do this, 20 minutes ago. Our starting five, our shout outs. Her Dizzle is in. NU Grandpa making a rare Saturday appearance in the stream. Good to have you, NU Grandpa. Tuck is here. Said, let's get this party started. Stephen Nichols. Good to have you, Stephen. Walter from Philly is in. Is General Booty Iowa's next quarterback? I don't know, Walter.
Who's General Boot? Is that somebody's actual name?
The Oklahoma transfer?
Kid. Yeah.
I believe he's the nephew of John David Booty.
Uh-huh.
And his name's General?
Yeah.
John David Booty carved up Nebraska one Saturday night in September back in 2007. Rick is here. Rick, good to have you, bud. We've got Moonbot. Moonbot is here. Kevin, morning. Kevin down in Texas saying what's up. Good to have him in. Mark Kraynak is in. We were doing this Husker-themed horse names for the Kentucky Derby today, and we had lots of input yesterday. Off the bus, Elijah, the other Elijah, checks in there.
Makes sad. I think that's mine.
With that, Scott is here. Michael, good to have you. Michael in from North Carolina. Scott is here. And Scott sharing a different Scott is not on the Harburg train. The other Brian, who got us the footage of Raiola's touchdown pass, he is in from Virginia Beach. Brian,
what's
good to have
you.
There
we go.
Doug is here as well. So good to have everybody in. Funky Giblets. Any concerns at linebacker? And that's that level of the defense you're wondering about. And I think they'll be okay there. But you're really gonna not having Reimers, not ideal. But I really love what I saw with Bayer last year. He is somebody that I think flashed and was nice. Nebraska's just going to be interchangeable, Vogues. If they're going against a phone booth offense, i.e. Iowa, they'll need to be able to handle between the tackle, downhill, slam it down your throat, and then they'll need to be able to flip the next week to spread it out, USC or whatever Oregon's doing. So you've got to be interchangeable.
And that's my bigger
physical and
concern.
fast.
That's my bigger concern with the linebacker position is not the starters, Bullock and Bear likely being the interior guys. It's the depth, because last year Nebraska had about 5 guys they could roll out there at the linebacker position and not much drop-off. We saw that whenever Henrich went down against Wisconsin. We saw that whenever Reimer missed some time in the middle of the season. They were very interchangeable last year. That's more my concern with the linebacker position, is what's the drop-off between the starters and the guys that need to come in and fill some time, because Big Ten's rough and tumble. We've talked about it. I think linebacker, defensive line is kind of in that same pantheon of the offensive line in terms of it's rare to have guys that are going to be able to start all 12 games because injuries happen in your front 7 on defense as well. That's kind of my bigger question with the linebacker position, is how deep is that room?
Pantheon. That's what I'm.
Word.
That's my question.
Good word, right?
How'd you come up with that? Well, and I think it's worth. Yeah, I was watching that position quite a bit too. Gage Stenger is a guy whose name was called a lot in the few times that he played, or not the few times, but he played a little bit later in the game. But I felt like the ratio of plays versus his name being called was high. Like that guy. He was in on a lot, so I think you may have something there, and that's the kid out of Millard South.
He's a hybrid guy. I love the fact that he can be athletic enough to cover, but he's physical enough to come down and tackle.
Stephon Thompson got in there too. That could be somebody that you look for. Brandon, when I was looking at this team, just one thing that also jumped out was general athleticism. Right, just like, and especially you can really tell it at the third level on defense, and you can really tell at the receiver position on offense. But I just think I feel like Nebraska has always had some of those guys, right? Some just super athletic guys, but I feel like they have a lot more right now, even if they're not necessarily playing yet, right? Or even if they don't figure into depth, just the general overall speed, quickness, strength, explosiveness looked different, I think, than Nebraska's had in a while. Did you observe the same thing?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the difference there has been in recruiting. The staff talks a lot about, we're still saying it now, like if we see a guy who, runs 10.8 or whatever the number is that they're looking for in the 100 and has a 38-inch vertical and maybe hasn't played a ton of football, like we're gonna take a swing there because we're confident in our ability to teach him to play football. So I think in this second spring, you're seeing some of those guys kind of filter up into second, third on the depth chart, and when a guy's that athletic, it just kind of, it's hard to miss. So it becomes about like how ready can you get somebody to be ready to play Big Ten football, because when you've got athleticism like that, you can kind of cover up the occasional mistake or two just by being fast or being able to jump out of the gym or whatever the case may be. So I think that's what we're seeing. That's kind of the difference that I noticed this spring when you look at the roster. And I think Nebraska. It's easy to play a lot of guys and kind of be like, well, it's year one, it's your kind of everybody's trying to win, of course, but it's kind of your only expectation-free year where it's just like, yeah, if we're going to do some things just for gains down the road, year one's the time to do it. I think Nebraska is probably going to play more guys in year two. Like, I think they've got more guys that are ready to rotate in at various spots. So if you can do that, and it kind of ties into the linebacker piece of it, I would agree with Elijah. I think top line guys, Nebraska should be okay if you stay healthy. It's just the depth there. You're going to be relying on some young players, which they're more than happy to do. It's just it's hard to like pencil that in. It's like, oh yeah, this redshirt freshman's fine, even though we haven't seen much of him.
Well, it should be noted for any young linebacker who gets playing time, playing behind a defensive line with Nash Hutmacher and Ty Robinson, where offensive linemen can't get off double teams as quickly as they might against lower competition level defensive linemen. It's a big help for linebackers whenever you're not getting linebackers up in your face offensive linemen up in your face every single play.
Yeah, I think that's the ceiling setter for Nebraska on defense in 2024. It's like, how good can that D-line be? I mean, Matt Rule has mentioned it multiple times now, fairly recently, about wanting to be able to get that 4-man rush, which like every team wants that for a reason. Like if you can disrupt the passer without having to devote extra guys, well, it makes everything a whole lot easier, particularly on third down passing situations.
Well, we saw that with the Peso defense back in 2009. That's exactly
Eric Haig. Good pull.
I love a Peso reference at 8:20 in the morning.
Hey, that's exactly what Nebraska was in 2009. You had, and I think part of that too was an insane conditioning level for those starting 4 at defensive line. Those guys didn't sub out. That's one of the more underappreciated things about Sue too, is at his size, he did not need to come out, and their just general conditioning was absurd. Well, and it looks like Nash is trying to head down that same route. Like when he first remember a couple years ago, Nash, he could only go like 6 snaps before he had to come out.
I mean, big guys. If you're in the midst of the hell that is an 8 to 10 to 12 play drive, then you're 3 bills on the line, and it's 80% humidity and it's 97 degrees against Michigan. Good luck. Well, I mean, it's just not something that you're going to win too often.
Really fast. This is a bit of a callback to a take I had last year, because I said this, and I want to take my victory lap. The Peso is essentially the 3-3-5. The Peso is like a 4-2-5, and when you look at it schematically, like the Peso, one of the better defenses that Nebraska had since the turn of the century, and it's essentially the 3-3-5. The 4-2-5 and the 3-3-5 are pretty similar in how they're run. And I don't know, it's just something to note there that Nebraska is essentially running the Peso defense. It's under a different name, and it's leading to success yet again. And there was just so many doubts about the 3-3-5 last year. I remember saying it's pretty much the Peso, and the Peso worked fine for Nebraska.
It's bringing a linebacker up to the D-line, like in terms of like alignment, when you actually saw it go to a 4-2-5, like you're saying, and then it's bringing like an Eric Haig down.
Well, it's having that
freak athlete,
that unique tweener athlete guy that can be in the box linebacker just the same as he can get out and cover in the secondary.
And that's Gifford.
Yes.
Now, and then I don't think, does Wright play that same position? I get a little confused with him sometimes. I feel
Buda's,
like he's out
Buda's, I mean, it's 6'3", 2, whatever. I mean, the guy's got all that size and the rare combination of size, speed, athleticism to just kind of drop him wherever, and he can stand up against the run.
I believe Brett's is kind of the backup to Gifford as it stands
and
right
Brett's is nice
Kobe
as
Brett's.
well. Yep, Doug in the stream. The more guys that get minutes, the fewer you lose in the portal. Playing the spring game late worked out nice too. And Vogues, that's been a great plan, and it's been the development phase that you're wanting for this football team to be able to reload on a third series, not wait for another year. But Rule and White did this early and often with that 3-line rotate, the hockey term, obviously, but it's like you have 3 lines and you had 30 guys engaged and they're getting better. And you see some progress. So not only are the relationships, the personal relationships emphasized to develop from coach and position coach and teammate from a chemistry build standpoint, but then you're actually seeing progress on your craft in the practice sessions. It makes it a place you want to stay versus you want to bounce. And I know Rule hit on that this week as well with even some of his assistant coaching members, so his staff, where it's just a great climate he's created.
Yeah, it is, and it feels, I think pieces of this are from his previous stops, of course, but it still feels tailored a little bit to Nebraska as well, where you're always going to have some walk-ons. The spring league that they employed this year, I believe was a new idea for Rule and that staff. And, it'd be interesting to get some unfiltered thoughts from, say, a walk-on or maybe a guy who's second or third on the depth chart and has been around for a bit, and just say, hey, how much more football have you played over the past year? I mean, when you look at practice and, when you look at some of the rotation items, if a guy was in the rotation on the defensive line, say, it'd be interesting to know because I'm guessing the number or their response might raise an eyebrow or two, which isn't, to say that Nebraska wasn't trying to do that under the previous staff. I think this staff has just come in and been extremely about that piece of it.
Yeah. A couple other guys that stand out, and I don't know if they did for others, but especially as we talk about defensive back too, Sincere Safiula, right? Anybody notice him too? Just body type wise, he's freakish, sort of like Jamari Butler, or sort of like what was his name? Cam, that started for 4 years. And
Cam Taylor-Britt?
No, the other guy.
What era are we thinking here?
It's the same era. Defensive end. Oh, geez, why can't I think of defensive end / linebacker? See, the fact that we're all coming up blank tells you everything, because he played for 4 years. He played maybe 5 actually because of the COVID year. Played right out of the gate.
Caleb Tanner.
Thank you. Not Cam. Sorry.
Okay.
But freakish in terms of just physical stature, right? Safiula is one of those guys for sure in the defensive backfield. And then I thought Quentin Ives too.
I thought he looked good.
That's a big dude. That's a bigger running back, taller running back. If you get him up to say 230, something like that, by the time he's a junior, he could be a load. Now, if there's a concern coming out of there, and Brandon, you mentioned it. I don't know if it was last week or the week before, but at kicker, about how it was a tough situation for Alvano to walk into. It was one as a true freshman having to start at the Power 5 level, but especially one whose offense can't score, and it's kind of all on you. Hey, no pressure, freshman, but we win or lose based on your kicks, even against directional schools. It's a lot of pressure to put on him. He didn't have a good day. I don't know, Brandon. I don't know if you've ever dove into kicking numbers. Quarterbacks sort of are who they are, and they reveal themselves early. I know you've done good research on that. Do you know about kickers? Is a dude that goes 50% as a freshman, is he going to go 90% as a junior?
Do they get better with age?
Yeah. Because that's a concern.
Yeah,
it's a concern right now.
It is. It's not just the spring game misses, but they were tough misses.
Yeah. 30, 40 yarders that were just.
What do you do with that? I mean, Drew Brown kind of comes to mind a little bit. He was a guy who was a little rough out of the gate, and by the time he came to be a veteran player, he was the kind of set it and forget it kicker. You want and you expect a Power 5 team to have. I haven't looked at any large numbers with kickers, but it's an interesting idea. I will now to kind of see where it's at, because the other thing that gets interesting about kickers now is say there is an issue there, mental, some sort of lingering injury. Who knows? I'm not saying that there is, and I think this is Alvano is where Nebraska is going at kicker. But if you wanted to look in the transfer portal, kickers have all of a sudden become one of the most prized type of player or positions out there in the portal, because it's very easy for in Alabama, say, if they need to replace a kicker, to go out and get an all MAC kicker or somebody from G5 or even D2 or FCS. It's not different for a kicker, a place kicker, certainly. So those guys are kind of in high demand. So it becomes a little bit tough to address that one, I think, quickly, the way you can say at receiver, as we've seen Nebraska do multiple times. And I think they've done again as we look towards 2024.
Brandon Vogel with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Brandon, we're up against here. Anyone else have any other Husker football thoughts before I switch gears? Schmidt, go for it.
No. I was gonna shift. I jumped the gun on the raising of the hand. I'm wrong, but I wanted to you going volleyball here?
Yes, I was going to go volleyball, and then we have to get a Kentucky Derby thought as well from Vogues. Harper Murray, though, in the news yet again, this time alleged to have stolen jewelry from a local Shields. That the report last night from the Lincoln Journal-Star. Just a couple of weeks after the DUI, it's surprising. It's not a good look for Harper. Her question remains in doubt, officially going to be suspended for that match this afternoon in Kearney. Just your thoughts on that entire situation.
Yeah, unfortunate, obviously, and last night's news on top of the the initial report, the initial arrest for DUI at this point. Not the offseason you want from the best player, one of your best players certainly, and I think a player that based on what she did last year, you're just kind of like, well, it's going to be nice for Nebraska to have for the next 4 years. So we'll see. That's going to be a tough one, I think, for Coach Cook and the team itself overall to handle. Those kind of decisions, whatever they may be, are never easy. So just kind of wait and see on that. But yeah, not the spring you wanted for Harper Murray, certainly, but also kind of the carryover effect, I think, for Nebraska volleyball.
Vogel, I'll let you pick where we close this interview. There's the Kentucky Derby. Yesterday we had the Husker-themed horse names we were throwing around. Rule of the Day has been suggested by NU Grandpa as being a great horse name for the Kentucky Derby. So we can either talk Kentucky Derby and potential Husker-themed horse names for the Kentucky Derby, or we could get your take on the Kendrick Lamar versus Drake rap beef that's been just on fire in the last couple of days. Both artists dropping a song last night. It was wild. If you follow that, if you have any comments on that, you can go there, or we can go Kentucky Derby.
I want to hear about Vogues' time in the infield at the Derby. The debauchery. Debauchery.
That's debauchery is kind of about the only way to describe it. It's not. It was also it might be 20 years ago this year, so it was a long time ago. But yeah, it's everything you hear about. It's kind of great big messy music festival, except there's a horse race going on around it. A lot of mint juleps, a lot of expensive mint juleps. So unfortunately, Elijah, I'm not up to speed on Kendrick v. Drake. I keep hearing things about it, but I don't care enough to actually listen to the songs. So
it's wild. Last night, Kendrick Lamar accused Drake of being a pedophile.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, it's wild.
Now maybe I'm in. If the knives are that sharp, might be time for me to tune in.
Last night, the diss track that Kendrick released was crazy. One of the verses was a letter addressed to Drake's mom telling her she raised a bad son, which is wild.
I'm gonna get that letter from Junior. He's already got it typed out.
You guys have asked me for a Husker horse name before. I've used this one before, but I haven't come up with anything to beat it. I'm still, and this is a way throwback. I'm still man, woman, and child. It just fits. I think you get 18 characters. If you run it all together, looks good in the daily racing form. Sounds great when you're coming down the stretch and winning the Kentucky Derby.
Be perfect. Perfect.
Brandon Vogel with us, counterread, counterread.com. Vogues, how can folks get signed up with you and Aaron Sorensen? Great insight each week.
Yeah, Substack makes it real simple. Just head to counterread.com. You'll see your options. You can join us for free and get access to the free posts. We do a couple of those a week. We also do 2 subscriber exclusive posts each week. So you got a couple of options to check out there. You can subscribe monthly. You can subscribe annually. Basically cuts 2 months off the monthly price. So plenty of options, and looking forward to the off season. Actually, not because it means there's any less work, but gives us time for more projects like finding out from Mark if kickers are who we think they are, or if they can get better.
Yeah.
Vogues, appreciate you. Have a good weekend. All right.
You too, guys. Thanks.
There he is. Good to hear from Brandon Vogel.
And we hardly even got to get into what he wrote about this week, which is he's kind of breaking down the opponents.
Yeah.
And went through the first 3 or 4, Illinois, UTEP, bunch of others some interesting intel because, like, okay, without having read that, does anybody know anything about UTEP? No, they do not.
No,
I'm even what colors they are.
I'm looking for week 2.
But so little quick synopsis that Brandon kind of pulled. New head coach, and he's trying to do one of those blur offense, go fast. We want to snap the ball every 12 seconds. They probably don't have the personnel to do it. They have a quarterback that has a little bit of returning experience, but seems like they are comfortable with going system first, installing what they need to install, and maybe even taking this year as taking a flyer on this year in order to kind of get the system going and get recruiting going and all that. So long story short, and their head coach, he was at Austin, PA, won a couple, I believe, conference titles in his last couple years. So anyways, UTEP is it looks like it'll be a nice opening game for Nebraska. And especially if they go fast like that, they get some 3-and-outs.
Mm-hmm. I did see one.
Barney might have 300 yards receiving. It's possible.
I did see one UTEP fan on Twitter. He may be the only UTEP fan. He seemed to be a diehard. It was wild. That was convinced that Chief Borders entering the transfer portal was all the proof he needed that Nebraska was in shambles and UTEP was going to upset Nebraska in week 1. And I was like, oh, that's a take.
Chief is scared. Chief is very, very scared of what
Chief is going to UCLA to be a social media influencer and finish out his football season. Yeah. A big influence on us is the Iron Horse, Gary Sharp.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Let's not forget.
Hi, Sharpie. How are you?
Gary did interview one of the biggest influencers in the world and Livy Dunn at the College World Series last summer.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
Yes, I did. And she was in Omaha last week, but I was busy. I had spring game.
Yeah. He was hanging out with us.
Thanks for dispelling those rumors.
That's loyalty. That's loyalty.
This guy that's 6'6", got a pretty cool mustache and a golden right arm got in the way of us.
Yeah, you were almost describing me up until the golden right arm.
You're a lefty? Is that it?
No, I got no arm. That's the reason I quit baseball when I was 10.
Offensive tackle.
Hey, speaking of arms, real quick, we'll get to football. Of course we will. But let's real quick. This is baseball.
Yeah.
Brett Sears, right? He's thrown a lot of pitches. He's had some really quality starts, but his pitch count's also been pretty high on a few of them. Like his complete gamer that he had a few weeks ago was 115 pitches. And he works quick. He's an energy kind of pitcher. It's not necessarily one of those smooth Tom Glavine-like deliveries. I mean, he puts some strain on his body. Last couple outings, they're still okay.
Yeah.
But your level of concern now that it's early May, your top Friday night starter has now gone back-to-back outings where, his season numbers are dropping. He's giving up more hits, giving up more runs, not lasting as long. Did you think that's wear and tear, or do you think that's teams kind of getting the book on him, or do you think it's just baseball and he'll be fine?
No, I think that's you're a baseball guy, Mark, so that's a valid observation. I think when you're a guy that's at the front of the pack and you have thrown as many pitches as he has, you're not always going to be perfect, especially a guy that's never really experienced that. So he's got dinged his last 2 starts. Last night was a little rough. Yeah. But they're an interesting team. Like the times when Brett Sears hasn't been good, the offense has been good. So they picked him up. But I think it's something to watch over his next 2 starts in the Big Ten, and then whatever he does here in Omaha, 3 weeks from now in the Big Ten tournament. I still want him as my number 1. I've seen enough of him. But last night was kind of a game that you were like encouraged, going, okay, some guys that you expect, either Sears or Worthley, who I think is really good out of the bullpen, all of a sudden aren't great. But man, Deus on the back of the back end of the bullpen came in, and Minnesota didn't score in the 8th or 9th. They're a good team, and I think they had their ups and downs in April and off to a good start in May and 2-0. But you got to win series, and it's crazy, guys. I've talked about this on my show. I know you guys have. I think our perception of Nebraska baseball inside the state is different nationally because we watch it, and we just watched in April where they were up and down. We got frustrated on the midweek, but boy, they would look good on the weekend. I still think there's a chance they could host. They're going to have to win the Big Ten. So, So you're looking at least 8-2 minimum of this last 10, and they're now 1-0. But talking to Kendall Rogers with D1 Baseball, he thinks because of Nebraska, the RPI, they're in the Midwest, they could still be in line to host, but they've got to win the Big Ten. They can't finish runner-up in the Big Ten.
Like regular season, tournament, or both? What are you talking here?
Right, both.
Well, if you're in a spot where you win the regular season, the postseason, no. It's winning the regular season. Okay. So that means your conference record is pretty good because the reality is Big Ten baseball this year isn't very good. Nebraska is kind of carrying the water for everybody, and then you got to go about 40 more spots on the list before you find another Big Ten in the RPI, and there are 3 teams in the 60s. That's not good enough. I mean, if you're going to get an at-large bid, you're not sitting in the 60s. So, it's you got to win the regular season, and I think for the Big Ten, if that happens and then Nebraska wins in Omaha, boy, you hate that because I think this is a one-bid league.
Wow. Because the other team that's been shuffled in the early projections has been Purdue, right? They're the other team that is at least in the field right now, but that's not set in stone. The thing that you like about Nebraska with their RPI and their schedule is that a lot of teams they've faced are in the field, projected to be in the field right now, or they're just on the cusp, i.e. Kansas or a K-State. They're right there as well. But you're seeing a team that last night Sharpie did what they needed to do, and against a team that you should be batting practice, Nebraska's offense stepped up. And you had the no-no earlier in the week. Is that something you think could be that launching point for this team right now? They pivot moment for baseball, for momentum, for Will and company. You get the no-no from Jackson. You get game 1. You've got maybe 2 more to handle. Maybe you sweep Minnesota. I don't know. But you get an incredible performance, an all-time performance midweek right after getting swept by Creighton. Could this turn it around and put them on a run?
I don't know, because I think this team is a front-running team.
Okay.
And I say that I'm not negative, is this team needs to have a lead. Okay, they've got to get a lead and play with a lead. And if it coincides with really good starting pitching, then they're cooking with peanut oil, i.e. what happened Wednesday, the complete opposite which happened on Tuesday, where they fell behind. They gave up a 6 spot in the bottom of the first. Now they battled back, but it was too much to overcome, where last night they got going early. And, Minnesota played pretty well last night. I mean, it's not like Nebraska put up a big crooked number and ran away. Minnesota hung in the game. So that was kind of a game where you had to have a lot of grit. I think last night was probably one of those games that was a typical Will Bolt game. Yeah, you would like to win 6-1 or, blow somebody out, put up a 10 spot and you win 10-2. But they kept battling and they got contributions up and down their lineup. So you're only a game out in the Big Ten behind Purdue. And Purdue, with a win last night, they have moved into the top 60. So they're 56. Here's the thing to keep in mind about Nebraska is they do have that series at home against Indiana. You can look at Indiana's RPI, which is 69, but Indiana is just a game behind Nebraska in the standings. So the most important thing this time of the year, just win. You just win. The only thing you can control is yourself and winning. And so today is another big day because that means you won another Big Ten series if you're able to get a victory. And then tomorrow, Minnesota hasn't been swept this year. Man, if you could sweep Minnesota, you're feeling really, really good because you only have 1 midweek game left. And then you have 2 weekend series. And you would love, ideally, guys, you would love, before you take the field in Omaha for the Big Ten tournament, for sure that you're in the NCAA tournament. And I think Nebraska, outside of just a colossal collapse, I think Nebraska's in the NCAA tournament. Now it's, are you a 2 or are you a 3? Or is there craziness enough that, man, you're in the running on that final weekend to possibly host, which would put you as a top 16 team in college baseball, which I don't know that they are.
That seems right. That seems so steep.
But Mark, it's still like I talked to Kendall Rogers at D1 Baseball. We all know Kendall. He's like, man, you got to keep paying attention. They're just hanging around. And the way the committee operates, they may look at Nebraska and go, okay, chance to host. And I'm like, could they host as a 2 seed? And he goes, yeah, but so I'm still under the mindset that they're a good, not great team, that they're good enough to be a 2 seed and will get shipped off for the 16th time in the last 20 years to Stillwater.
Their midweek performances this year just worry me. I think it's just indicative of They worry me in a regional / super regional setting.
Though it would make sense that Husker fans put more stock into losing to Creighton than national media in a midweek game. That would make sense. My concern is still who's a third pitcher in a potential regional, because you need 3 pitchers in a regional, starting guys that you feel confident in, because 3-0 in a regional means you're on to the super regional. That's a tall task for Nebraska, but like who's
your number 2, by the way, that you're super confident about?
I am the most confident in McConaughey. I'm not super confident in McConaughey. He's the number 2 guy that you feel all right about, and then there's a pretty steep drop off down to 3, and that doesn't tend to bode well. Walsh, maybe Brockett has built some confidence after a no-hitter. You were excited about him early in the season, and he kind of didn't live up to it. But But they know they're 2. They're gonna play the percentages and the matchups for 3 and 4. Because if you get to a 4th game like in the Big Ten tournament, that means you're probably playing to stay alive on a Saturday, or you're playing in the championship game on a Sunday.
Yeah. When you got 5 guys above 300 right now, too, the bats have been solid enough. Dylan Carey's pretty much your worst regular starter average-wise at like 250, but he's coming alive.
Yeah, he looked good. He had more competitive at bats last night, Mark, that I think I've seen in a while.
Yeah, and he's one of the more gifted players offensively on the team.
Yeah.
But sophomore slump, and I think guys have the book on him a little bit. He'll use another offseason.
But you've also noticed something that I think when they were in February and March, this was a big part of their offense. In April, they just couldn't get that big hit or string together stuff in an inning where you would get a 2-out base hit. Like Tuesday here in Omaha, they couldn't get 2-out base hits. They couldn't hit with runners on base. You look at Wednesday night and last night, they're back to the best way for Nebraska to work offensively when you don't have 2 big boppers in the lineup like last year. Get them on, get them over, get them in. And you take advantage, you put pressure on the other team, and all of a sudden Silva's scoring on a wild pitch or, leadoff base hit, and he sacrificed to second or he steals second, and you get that hit with a runner in scoring position. That's their best offense. I think the last 2 nights they look better at the plate. But again, all they can control is just win. Just continue to win, and don't leave it up to people going, oh, well, you lost to Minnesota. You lost a series to Minnesota, and they're 127 in the RPI. Weird year.
Gary Sharp with us here, weekend edition of Hail Varsity. And Sharpie, let's get to the spring game. We were smiling to start the show this morning. We were all sardine packed into the quarter of the single barrel. We had a great time. It was good to hang out with everybody. And Saturday didn't disappoint. It puts a lot of smiles on Nebraska fans' faces. You got expectations. You have some hype. That train is going to be chugging along the tracks. And the reality is you just have kind of a different looking Nebraska, don't you?
I think you have a different feel. And I think it's because of 15. And I know people are trying to figure out, boy, how do you handle the summer talking about a kid that should still be in high school, but yet he's this, oh my gosh, or he's on stage with Zach Bryan. I think it's okay to say Nebraska's finally got the quarterback position fixed, and you have a quarterback that at least gives you hope. Now, before spring ball started, defensive guys were like, you know what? We've got to be better. We're going to be better. If we can just get competent quarterback play, we've got a shot to make this a really successful season, whether it be 7 or 8 wins, bottom line, bowl game, go from there. And I think after a spring on the defensive side of going up against him for 15 practices, guys are going, we got a shot to be successful, because now we can do things that we haven't been able to do in the past in our offense, and we're going to be okay doing our side of the ball. I think it gives you hope. But we all know this. We were all around the game on Saturday. It just is a different feel. Yeah. Like I come at me and say, oh, why are you guys hyping him up? If you watched him and you've been with us and you've watched a lot of quarterback play over the last 10, 15 years, there are very few guys in that position that give you a different feel. And that's one thing Dylan does. And I think Nebraska, it got exactly what they thought they would get. I said to somebody, I go, were you surprised? Because I think everybody had expectations going in of, okay, I've heard good things. Let's see. And then you see him in person, and some of the things they were able to do, you're like, okay, I'm surprised. They're a little bit better than I thought. Did you guys have that reaction, or anybody that you talk to on a regular basis have that reaction?
I don't think the shock was there per se, because you have this advertisement in your mind, right, of what it can be, but you just haven't seen a lot of follow through over the years where, okay, what's the best case scenario going to be, and does it actually play out? I think you saw a lot of best case scenario with, and it wasn't super intricate. I'm not slamming the offense, but they made simple plays. You've talked about pitching and catching, and that's what I smile about. If the guy makes the right read, and he does the routine. Oh no, by the way, he's really good at the spectacular. You put that together, it's all right. I was pleased for Nebraska fans that it looked like it was hyped up to, I guess.
Guys, I think one thing that stands out with him too is just his range, right? We love range. We love players and people that have just great dynamic range. But you look at there's like 4 throws. The throw to Fedoni early, pretty simple, right? Kind of a flare out. I don't know what you call it exactly. Looks like a screen to me. We'll call it that. But he leads him well. Fedoni has momentum then heading upfield, and he's 260 pounds on a DB with momentum. Look out. So simple play. That was good. Cross over the middle to Bullock. That was through 3 defenders. Yep. Threaded the needle. Perfect. Deep ball to Lloyd. Dropped right in the bucket. Bonner in the corner, we had talked about, just the perfect amount of touch. So 4 very different kinds of throws. Perfect. Perfectly executed. And let's not forget, too, I think it was also impressive, and maybe we could start to believe in the structure of the Satterfield offense, in that it was so interchangeable. So Dylan wasn't going with the same receiving core and the same offensive line each time.
13 different targets.
Yeah, they were mixing it up quite a bit. So you can't just chalk it up to chemistry or whatever. He was probably throwing to some guys that he's hardly thrown to in the spring, but structurally it felt like the offense was there. He knew what to do with it, and he got it there. And you could kind of say the same for Harper to a degree too. And even Danny Kalin, who was maybe just like a hair or 2 off on some of his throws.
They finally got the quarterback room right, and I'm including all 3. It's almost like Glenn Thomas came a year too late for Harburg, because Harburg looks different. But you're right about the offense, because they can make all the throws. This offense now with a quarterback that can play just simple pitch and catch, has poise, has touch, has also the mind, this is an offense that will not be a first read offense anymore. You'll have progressions. But I think it also opens up things on the outside that if you like your perimeter blockers, whether it be wide receivers or tight end, all of a sudden the screen game could be back in play. But most importantly, RPO game. I'm going to throw another throw, guys, in there to see if you guys feel the same way. Because the knock, and this is a little bit where the past of quarterbacks is, man, we really want that quarterback to use his legs. There's a play where Dylan buys time. And while things open up downfield, he buys time with his legs while his head is processing, and he hits Flint for 29 yards.
Yep.
That's a freshman quarterback that did that would either make a mistake, throw the ball late, or would take a sack. I think another throw that doesn't rank on the throws of, oh my gosh, there was a play, they had a little post to the sidelines, and I think it was a tight end. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name. Raiola threw a ball that the way he threw it, the catch was going to be made by only one guy, and that's on your team, and that would have to be a pretty good catch. But if you're not able to complete it, no one else is touching it, and it's going to go out of bounds. And I'm like, that's stuff you can't teach.
And that was the Janirin Bonner touchdown also, right? Same type deal. I think you're talking about one to Ismail Smith-Flores, the tight end out of Texas.
Where Raiola's rolling right, you could kind of say he brought on the rush himself, but as soon as he kind of broke that tackle box, he just chucked it towards the sideline, knowing only one guy could make the catch. And I would say you get an offense where maybe high-jumping state champion Carter Nelson is playing tight end, that might be a catch if it's another guy. I'm just throwing that out there.
Well, he also, you noticed another thing, and this was the problem last year, like even Fedoni, like Harburg threw a ball last year that would rise. And so as a wide receiver, it was tough to catch. You weren't used to that. watch the one thing I noticed right away, and again, we've talked a lot about Glenn Thomas and getting a quarterback coach that is his forte, is if you watch the quarterbacks warm up before the game, they did something that I think is very subtle that we've all done in the backyard. Can I play catch with you and it's just normal? I'm throwing it chest to chest and not I'm throwing a pass and so the other quarterback has to catch it over here and then bring it down and he throws it back. Guys were throwing chest to chest back and forth. So back to that just simple pitch and catch, okay? Yeah. So they're just throwing naturally and it feels good to throw. And watching that, I'm like, man, I've watched quarterbacks warm up and one quarterback throws like that and the other quarterback is throwing the ball where the manager's got to reach over here and grab it and hand it to the quarterback. They're a better room as a whole in terms of the mechanics and the motion. And I also think it is a high football IQ room. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You got two freshmen coming in that came from two prolific offenses in high school where they put a lot on the quarterback's plate. Mike Huffman playing quarterback for him, man, you are a student of the game, but he gives you a lot of responsibility. And then Harburg is learning as we go. So there's a lot to like about that position. But man, if you get that position fixed, it opens up the wide receivers, the tight ends. It makes life easier for an offensive lineman. And then the next part is, what does it do with your running game?
Well, those are two guys, those freshmen they're quarterback circuit guys, right? Nebraska's had to trot out guys like, Martinez, who's a good athlete, good quarterback, but not like true quarterback that had a lot of experience. These are circuit guys that went to Elite 11, that have had real specialized training. Nebraska hasn't had a lot of those types. They've had good players at quarterback, but those two come in already very highly trained, right? Very sophisticated in terms of their understanding. I mean, the fact that they can pick up this playbook, they've only been here since January, and operate an offense. That's the other thing. How are you going to perform when there's 50,000 people watching? They've never played in front of crowds like that. You never know how they're going to respond. And the moment was not too big for either of them, either of those freshmen, right? And then here's the other thing with Harburg. We forget, and we saw him last year, but in terms of just physical specimen, 6'5", 220, that's kind of like your prototypical quarterback size, right? That's what you want. And so if you can mold him, give him good coaching, not kick him out of the quarterback room, Whipple, 2 years ago, like seriously.
No, you're right.
Give him some training. He's a very good athlete, very good size, and dedicated. So
got a coachable kid too.
Yeah, and got Rule said it in the post spring. He's like, if you're to roll through the playoffs, what do you have to play, like 15 games now, 16, or something like that? There's no way you're getting through the whole season with one quarterback. Like,
that's why I think also Saturday told you that Harburg is a quarterback. This idea of him playing tight end, your backup quarterback is not playing another position.
Do you think they'll keep him? So that's interesting. I wonder if
is there a Tebow package for Harburg in the future?
Why? That's what I'm saying. It's like, can you keep him on the bench for 4 quarters though? Like, it's just if it's a tight game versus UTEP, you're only winning by 10 or something. Is he not getting any snaps? I can't imagine that.
So I get what you guys are saying, but I'm more of, why would we take one of our best players off the field?
No, I get you.
Because he wants to play, and you don't want him to transfer, right? Like, I think that factors in now. You got to get that guy some snaps, don't you? Or is it one of those things too? Because like sometimes when you have a couple of good quarterbacks without causing a controversy, if you handle it right, you give a guy a couple series, and then you give the backup a series, right?
Here's an idea.
Well,
here's an idea. You just go back to beating the hell out of teams by 35. So guess what? The second half is yours.
Yeah, I get packages and that kind of stuff, but if your quarterback one is one of the best players on the field, I don't know why you'd take him off the field when it's time to either make a first down or score a touchdown. That's just me. They'll find a way for Harburg. I think Mark or Schmidt or Elijah made a key comment about that quarterback room, because nobody went in the portal. I mean, you're not surprised. They're all kind of figuring things out and they're young. Ohio State didn't have any quarterbacks go in the portal. That shows you that quarterback room at Nebraska is in a good spot. There is competition. Everybody's getting a same amount of, hey, I'm working with the ones, I'm working with the twos. We know where we stand. There's good communication there. But all three guys are really good teammates. So that goes a long way, because it would be easy if you were this dynamic freshman that came in, and if you were an a-hole, man, you are being ghosted by this football team. It's important to come in and be a good teammate. And all three of those guys, and it helps them with the internal competition, they're all good teammates. And I think that's also what I found out. One of the big things this summer or this spring is Nebraska's in a good spot as a roster.
Like culturally.
They've got good people, and they're all coachable. Like they're good teammates, which can go a long way when you get into the foxhole in November and you don't have to worry about the trust of the guy next to you or, oh boy, here we go again. I think that's an impressive quality that Rule has intimated, but he wants us to see it for ourselves.
Speaking of culture here, are you surprised we didn't see more transfer portal departures this week? You had the cryptic tweet from Malachi that maybe made you think, and then no, he's sticking around. At the end of the day, you didn't lose any key contributors, Chief's really the only guy that was probably going to be seeing the field in any significant quantity next year, barring any injuries.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised, but I think we built up the spring transfer portal to be something that it never was going to be. Okay, you remember we were supposed to say, oh, this is going to be chaotic. There's going to be these big-time guys. There really were not a lot of headliners that jumped into the portal. Now, from Nebraska's standpoint, I'll be interested when we get to the fall, and then some of those rooms that have 24 scholarships in them or 14 scholarships, some of the redshirt freshmen or sophomores realize, man, my path to playing isn't very – there isn't a nice path there. It might be time for me to go somewhere else. So when we get to the fall, I wouldn't be surprised in some departures. But no, I think that there's another part of what Nebraska did in the spring that if you're on the edge of like, am I going to stay or am I going to go? They give you a lot of reps. They play a lot of people, especially on defense. I think by halftime against UTEP, they're going to have 20-plus guys that will have played on defense. So you're thinking, okay, I might get a shot here because they're giving shots to everybody else. But I think if you're in this program, in this current development structure, if you're in this program for 2 years, 2.5, and you really haven't seen the field, then I think that's where you go, man, it might be time to leave. One thing with cheap borders, I guarantee you guys, we don't see this at a lot of other programs where a coach, because you did him a solid, he's going to do you a solid. He knows that you're leaving because you want to play more, and there's just at the jack position, you're not going to play more. We're going to let you be out in front of the media. I'm going to talk about you so that when another coach Googles you, all they see is good things. Because you're going to graduate, you did us a solid, I'm going to do you a solid. You very rarely see that, and that's what happened this week with Matt Rule and Chief Borders, because he knew a couple of weeks before, or at least maybe a week before the spring game, that Chief was interested in possibly going somewhere else where he could play more.
It might sound a little cheesy, but it honestly seems like respect is a big thing in that program, right? And they're really intentional about it. It's not that Scott Frost and his staff were intentionally disrespectful, but sometimes just negligent, right? Just not maybe paying attention like you should. Because think about this too, guys. How many times, ever since Callahan even, would you just hear rumors of discord or this coach is a jerk and players don't like him and, oh, this guy's unhappy? You don't hear any of that under Rule. You just don't hear it. He's firmly in command.
Well, it helps when
there is respect throughout that organization.
It helps when you're transparent.
Yeah,
you communicate.
It also helps that the guy that you see on stage in downtown Omaha on Monday night with Zach Bryan is the same guy that's in front of his team on Saturday after a spring game. I think that goes a long way in building internally, is that I don't have to worry about stories about my coach, or is that guy really telling us the truth? Is he just putting on a show? He's the same. And that would already be exposed if that was Rule. I mean, that would have been exposed early if guys going, man, this guy isn't the guy you think he is. I think it goes a long way. If you're the same guy away from the facility that you are in the facility, man, 18 to 23-year-old kids will be ride and die with you.
But you think back to some of the high-profile guys that would transfer out under Frost, and and how they would bark while they're leaving, right?
Yeah.
Think about oh geez, why can't I? J.D. Spielman and some of the stuff that you would hear that he would say, and think about Wandale, and even think about Greg Austin when he was on the staff. It was just, there was so much discord throughout. You just don't see that. Don't see that anymore. Don't hear it. It just feels like they're all on the same page, going the same direction.
So let me ask you guys this. And it's not just a rule thing. We've seen it with other coaches at Nebraska. Is everybody is treated the same?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it would be easy. It would be easy for them to throw pedals at 15. But they know the reality of what he can do for your program, but they haven't built him up through the roof. Everybody is kind of treated the same. And then Nebraska's not right now a roster that's chock full of stars, but I think you guys get what I'm saying is the guy that is starting at Rover is treated the same as the guy that's starting, as a third string guy. Now, there is definitely a difference, but we're going to talk about you and we're not going to knock you down. So everybody's treated the same way. You're treated the same way because you play for Nebraska, instead of, hey, this guy is our stud, and that third string defensive back, what's his name? I mean, Rule, the thing about Rule as an orator and a communicator, and I think just as a people person, is he knows a lot of guys' names that are in his program. Not a lot of times we know 150 names or 125 names. He does know a lot of guys' names, and he mentions a lot of names. You know that? He doesn't mention 15, hey, we really like what 15 can do. We really like what 21 can do. We really like what 24 can do. He mentions guys' names. And I think as a young kid, that's kind of a big deal. I mean, to hear your coach make your name, say your name, and you're Isaac Dickey, and you're going, whoa, okay.
Like, he saw me? He noticed?
Yeah, exactly.
One of the first names he brings up with our friends Damon and Ravi is, he said Cooper Houseman, Isaac Dickey, and giving credit to Dickey as being a guy that, as a lifting partner of Shavers, really brought Shavers along. Like, a guy that's, let's be honest, and Dickey, not going to see the field in 2024, getting a shout out in a spring interview for saying, hey, you helped bring this guy along. And Matt Rule's the type of guy that will take care of you in that way. Make sure you're taking care of it if you're putting in the work.
That's part of the culture build, though. I mean, that's how you go about it, where there is a big brother, so to speak, that this is how you do it, and this is the expectation. And you may be an incredible talent from Miami, but I'm a kid from a rural part of a rural state, and this is how we work here.
There's a floor effort level, right? That they try to impart. Yeah.
I want to go floor ceiling question with you, Sharpie. Based on what you saw Saturday, a lot of time between kickoff with UTEP because of quarterback play, and this was in our stream earlier, comments. Thank you. GRF is asking the question here with how he sees the quarterback room. He believes that 8's the number, the minimum number. That's going to be the floor now because of what you possibly have at quarterback play. Do you agree with that?
I don't know. I think the ceiling for this team is still to be determined.
Fair.
To me, it feels like a 7-win team. And to me, that's success this season. I mean,
because is it 7 because of the youth?
A little bit, because I still have some questions at certain positions. And I think they have enough talent to beat like-minded teams, like teams that live in your same neighborhood. Right. I wonder if they have enough to beat teams that are above them. But I think the next step is the teams that you're supposed to beat or perceived to beat or better than, you beat. And then the teams that you're an underdog against, you find a way to be competitive and maybe steal a game or two. Okay. I think in their neighborhood of the new Big 8, which is that 10 to 16, maybe even 8 to 16 range or 8 to 14 range where Nebraska kind of is living right now, I think they're one of the better teams in that grouping. So they're going to play really kind of, if you look at the 18 power rankings of the teams, their early part of the schedule, there's about 4 teams that are at the bottom of your league. Well, you need to beat those teams. Mm-hmm. And you need to beat teams that hang around you in the standings. Then it becomes when you play USC and you play Wisconsin and you play Iowa and UCLA and Ohio State, can you be competitive and can you get one of those wins? Because you've accomplished hanging out in your neighborhood. Now the next step is proving that you can take a step up in the tier because you have the talent, the coaching, and you're good enough for 60 minutes on a Saturday that you can beat those teams, and then you go from there. But I think the ceiling is to be determined because there's still some unknowns, but they feel like a 7-win team, and I would take that right now, guys.
So we're sharing the schedule on the screen right now and taking a look at it. There's some presumption here, right? We try to always rid ourselves and be realistic of, no, 9 wins is not the standard anymore. That was the standard. No, 9 wins is not like you hope it is. But when you look at this, UTEP, listen, they're installing a new offense, blur offense. It's, probably a win for Nebraska. Colorado, we've seen what's going on there. They always got the puncher's chance with the athletes they have on the edge and with a quarterback that can deliver it, but all new offensive line, defense suspects, like
very young.
Hornets Nest,
kind of the things you said last year, and they still won. It's a different Nebraska team. It should be noted, but
no, you're right. But
they're on a 3-game winning streak against Nebraska.
But that was also, Jeff Sims fumbling the snap 100,000 times and whatever. Like, you can eliminate some of that. You might have
didn't need to go that way last year.
Northern Iowa's been 6-5 2 years in a row. They're a respectable program at the FCS level, but they're not like quite the juggernaut that, say, North Dakota State is. Illinois, as you get kind of removed from, and this is all like glass half full stuff, right? Illinois, you get more removed from Lovie Smith and the talent he brought in. They look kind of just a middle of the road Big Ten team.
Let's lay something out. Last year was expected to be a bit of a rebuilding year for Illinois. They were very young last year and got a lot of young guys some playing experience. Bielema's Bielema.
They play tough.
He's shown what he is in college football. Yep. They're not going to be an easy out.
Yep. Not saying they're easy, but I'm just saying when you look at this first 7, there's not a team where you're just like, oh, that's a loss, right?
No,
there's just not. You just look at it and say, if Nebraska takes care of the ball, can get a plus play or two here or there, offensively or defensively, it's not crazy. It's unlikely just because of what we've seen. It's not crazy to think 7-0 is possible.
No, you're absolutely right. And I just said 7-5.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have
look at the last 5 here.
I have a little hesitation because I need to see it.
Yep.
Okay. I like some things, but I need to see them win some games and not drop a game where we're on overreaction shows going, WTF. That's to me the next sign of growth. But the schedule does set up at the beginning. If you're playing a young quarterback and everybody's trying to figure out their roles, you're able to keep your head above water. You don't start out with 2 road games. You don't start out with a conference game where that team is better than you, but yet you almost won it. So they're going to be able to navigate and build up and kind of get a good feel of their team before they get to Halloween, and that's, of course, is the Columbus trip. That's why I say the ceiling is still to be determined because they also have to have a good offseason, guys. They have to have a good offseason, and they have to have some guys that have to step up their game, and defense can't be the same. Defense has to be better. Offense is going to be better, but defense also has to be better. And, you want to see him take the ball away. I will say a thing where I say the ceiling is, I'm holding off on that, is there's subtle things. They said we're working on not turning the ball over. Kudos to them. They played a lot of guys in the spring game on offense. They had 1 interception. They had 1 fumbled snap. Last year, they had a bunch of them. And we went, boy, okay, that's just a spring game. Don't worry about it. They got to the fall, and the offense turned it over 31 times. They did more fundamental things right in a spring game than I've seen in a while. And they also had young guys that looked like they belong, whether they be a Barnes, a Charles, a Boodle, a Guthrie, and I'm talking about defensive guys. We've already talked about the offensive guys. So there's little things along the way that when I say 7-5, I think mine is fluid, but I need to see them win games where the team across for them has the same kind of optimistic outlook. And then you've beaten that team. Like I thought last year, beating Illinois was big. because Illinois has beaten you, and Illinois is probably a tick ahead of you in the standings. Northwestern as well. They were able to do that in the month of October, beat teams that live in their neighborhood. Then they weren't able to beat teams in the following month that are above them, or like Michigan State or Maryland, either even with them or below them.
Well, let me ask you, Gary. It's way too early for this conversation, just because it's spring and we have a lot of content to fill between now and the beginning of the season. Not that you can't answer the question.
Which, by the way, we are closer to the beginning of the season than we were to the end of last season, and we're 17 Saturdays away.
I love it. We got the countdown marker.
Yes. Let me ask
17.
you, Gary, with the 7-5 number that you have, like, what is to you the defining game on the schedule? I don't want to say they can't lose, but the game to you that determines if Nebraska reaches its ceiling, the fork in the road type game. Which game do you see as it stands right now?
This is going to be a little bit odd to people, but the Indiana game. Because it is a road game after a bye week. It may be a game that gets moved up to a Friday. And if you are playing well, people will talk about what's on the following week when you go to Columbus. Nebraska, whether it be me coaching the team, Mike Riley, Scott Frost, Matt Rule, when there are expectations, is like, oh, they're going to win that game. What happens? I think the Indiana game will show a lot about this team. Off of a bye week, road game, weird Indiana team. You haven't played there. You know, it's not like we're going to Bloomington every year or every other year.
No.
And if you are in a position where you are unbeaten, people are going to talk more about the game that is the following week than that game. That game will show me a little bit about where this team is at. If they're able to go into Bloomington, they are 6-0, let's say, and handle business, and it's not a tension convention, then I'm like, there might be something here.
And can you handle success?
Let's add one more to that. First-year head coach at Indiana, that's going to be looking for kind of
statement.
I'm not going to say a proofing concept type win. That you can go out there. Indiana will look at Nebraska as being a gettable helmet game for themselves.
You mean like Bielema to open up against Nebraska in the Bielema era?
Yes.
Yep.
Exactly.
My game is UCLA. Say you assume you handle your business in Bloomington leading up, that dreaded trap game before Ohio State. Are you looking ahead? And 18 to 22-year-olds love to look ahead. I mean, can you be the same team every Saturday? Can you handle Indiana? That's a great take, Sharpie. What happens in Columbus? Is it a close one? Is it an upset? Is it an ass kicking? Who knows? But if it's not a positive experience in Columbus, how do you come back against a team full of athletes in UCLA?
Yeah,
I mean that's my game, the UCLA game. But I like your Indiana take.
Yeah. I think another thing, guys, this year will show you coaching matters. I mean, I think we're gonna the Nebraska, with the talent they have, I think they have a higher baseline to start a jump in the summer to the fall. But we also know coaching needs to be better, especially in-game management coaching needs to be better in the fall.
Yes.
Gary, let's get
quarter.
Gary, let's get to Harper Murray here real fast. She's in the news again, accused of stealing from a local Shields some jewelry. Comes a couple of weeks after the DUI arrest. Just reaction.
Disappointment, sadness, illogical. I mean, man, I might be repeating the Nebraska volleyball coaching staff. It's, especially after what happened earlier with the DUI, and then for this to happen, you can't. There are two rules that coaches have when they talk to their young people: is don't embarrass yourself, don't embarrass the program. And for somebody who is an integral part of that program, who is out on social media, who is well known, this is going to be a challenge for Nebraska volleyball, because not only her, but also the Q rating for Nebraska volleyball is through the roof. We love the head coach. We love the players. They are out on social media. They are really, really good. They're getting negative attention. Mm-hmm. And that is something that has not been around Nebraska volleyball in a while. And it's one player, because of some missteps, that has brought the negative attention to Nebraska volleyball. And now how do they deal with it? I think John Cook will deal with this swiftly. I think don't embarrass yourself, don't embarrass the program, but there's simply something not right about Harper. And I will say the other thing that I think is really, you're like, my gosh, her sister was graduating from Michigan this weekend.
Yep.
So I don't think you'll see, and John has been, he's been asked about it, and he has, he's not really danced around the situation, but he hasn't dove into it. I think this situation, which they found out when they pulled up to the arena in Kearney yesterday, almost literally as they were pulling up to the arena in Kearney yesterday, I think he will deal with this first in the right way for a young athlete that he has gotten to know and built a relationship with her and her family. He will do the right thing for her, what she needs in her life right now that does not include volleyball, and get her what she is searching for. And then he will do the right thing for his volleyball program, because they've got to move on. They've got to make sure that the people that are in the program that are doing the right thing and that are representing Nebraska in the right way, they continue to do that while they take care of something that's on the side. I don't know if she'll be a member of the Nebraska volleyball program. There's still a lot of unknowns from the legal system, but the last thing she needs right now is Nebraska volleyball in her life.
So this is a really interesting topic, because especially with Cook. So you're talking about one of the preeminent programs in America, talking about Harper Murray, who waltzes right in to one of the top programs in America and just grabs a starting spot as a freshman. Olympic level talent is what we're talking about here. And then on top of it, Cook's own daughter.
Yep.
You said it's been a while. You kind of have to go back to then, and the details escape me, Gary. You might remember too, but from what I recall, it was a DUI or something like it.
Leaving the scene, there was no alcohol involved.
Okay, leaving the scene of an accident, but there were a couple infractions that his own daughter had right after transferring in, and she's obviously been able to turn her life around and become a productive member of society. So I think there's probably a little small part of Cook that has a bit more empathy, maybe for things like this. If you were to predict, do you think she's just off the squad forever, or do you think she is probably indefinitely suspended, has to earn her way back?
Indefinitely suspended. Now,
same.
If there is an arrest that is involved, it probably changes it a little bit. But I think he won't just. And here, that incident with his daughter was it 2017, right? No, 2011. So Lauren she was arrested because it was suspicion of leaving the scene of an injury accident, ticketed under driving under suspension. The motorcyclist broke their leg, and she had been ticketed for speeding. And I think the John Cook, after that incident, which hit close to home, is a little bit different in how he deals with punishment. There's a lot of stuff that he deals with internally that doesn't need to be out there for our business. He deals with it internally. Everybody knows where they stand. They move on. Some things where some of his players have stepped out. The John Cook that I know, and I know John Cook, I'm lucky enough to know him away from being the volleyball coach, is he will not just throw her away.
No.
Because, again, he's developed a relationship with her. He is invested in young people, and she is invested in his program. And he's going to help her find the best that is the best for Harper Murray when she's not playing Nebraska volleyball. Now, if there are other things involved, then she will not play Nebraska volleyball, because that's not what you want. But he's not going to throw her away. But indefinitely suspended, I think, is the right course. But if she is arrested, I think it changes it a little bit. But he won't just say she's gone. I don't think he will, because I think he knows that, man, she's asking for something. Can we, outside of Nebraska volleyball, let's find that and let's give it to her. And then if there's a road back, there is. But right now they have to focus on Harper Murray. And Nebraska volleyball has to do their own thing. Nebraska volleyball has to move on without her, prepare to make another run to the national championship, and let one of their young student athletes take care of what she needs to take care of. And then let's see.
Here's the thing too, is I think you can have a little bit of faith in whatever he decides, in that, of course, there's pressure to win at the Nebraska volleyball program, of course, right? But he doesn't need any one of those players in order to win at a high level. So whatever decision is made is not going to be based on competitive reasons.
Yep.
You're fortunate enough that you can lose a Harper Murray and still be top 5 in the country. You could lose any one of those players and still be top 5 because of the level of talent that they've assembled at Nebraska.
Yep.
Yeah. So it won't be based on winning and losing.
Don't embarrass yourself.
Yep.
Don't embarrass the program, and especially a program that is one of the most popular programs in the entire state.
Yeah.
And now you're getting negative attention. How do you deal with it?
Gary, before we get you out of here, Team Kendrick or Team Drake?
Oh, you know what? I am on Team Kendrick.
I knew you'd have a take.
Hey, but last night, man, that blew up. I thought, Kendrick on Wednesday went hard against Drake, and I'm like, oh, man, you better be watching your back. You better have a lot of security around you. Then last night it blew up. I can't wait for what's going to happen today. But the fact that Inside the NBA has gotten involved as well. They played Euphoria the other night, and all of them were scared that Drake would show up.
This is all going straight over Schmidt's head.
I know.
No,
Elijah and I are talking here in box 1 and 2. Mark's looking away out to his yard if he's going to have to mow it today. And Schmidt's like, is this Luke Combs? Is this a Morgan Wallen thing?
No, I'm aware. It's all right. The wife was talking about it last night.
Schmidt and Mark, you be like Elijah and I. You get a little up to date on things, man. Listen to some Shabuzi this morning.
Well, okay, I
at the bar.
I know hip hop
gets out of bed, it'll be cranked in the basement.
I know hip hop and rap isn't for everyone. That's perfectly okay. If it's not for you, I get it. This is shaping up to be the greatest hip hop or rap beef of all time. There's not even a close second at this point. Like, Drake's been revealed to have another hidden child. Kendrick's accused him of being a pedophile. Drake's accused Kendrick of raising a child that isn't his own because his baby mama was cheating on him. Like, it's wild right now. There's crazy stuff going on.
Let's just hope it ends differently in a better way than the last beef between the two rap moguls of the era, i.e. Biggie and Tupac.
Yes.
Whoa.
Right.
We might be heading that way.
Hey,
I need to know, Sharpie, who you picking? Who you picking for the Derby today?
You know what? It's rare. It's rare. I'm going to go a little bit outside. Everybody is going with the favorite at 17. I think I like the Japanese horse
Forever Young.
Yeah, Japanese horse hasn't won the Derby, but boy, they're getting in the game. And usually when a horse wins in Dubai, we go, I don't know. I think I like Forever Young today. Remember, a favorite hasn't won the Derby since 18. But 17, 11, 8, Forever Young in there. There's a lot of different things you can do. But I think I'm going with Forever Young because it's too easy to go with Fierceness or Sierra Leone. Also, don't overlook Counting Freedom, the Iowa horse that's running in the 4 spot.
I'm overlooking anything from Iowa.
Okay.
Gary Sharp, the Iron Horse.
Hey, Elijah, to be honest, so are quarterbacks and wide receivers.
That's pretty good.
Hey, can we take a total curveball here, Gary? See what you think. Bud Crawford fighting August, moving up to 154 pounds. Yeah. He's already dominated 140. He's already dominated 147. Now he's up to 154. According to ESPN, the guy he's facing, Israel Madrimov.
Yep, who's fought 11 times.
He's dangerous.
Yep, fought 11 times with seven knockouts. He is number 3 in the weight class. He's 10-0-1, so he's got a draw, but he's never lost. From what I understand, he's got a pretty vicious jab, if I'm not mistaken. I have to look that up again. Yes. I don't know for sure, but he has one really devastating punch.
Is this August 2nd in Los Angeles?
Yeah, and it's outside. It's outside in the MLS arena, wherever that is. So yeah, and we didn't really know when Crawford would come back because Spence was like, "Yeah, I might try to fight him again." Everybody's like, "Errol, don't, just stop, dude, just stop." So that's out of the way. Crawford moves up to $154. How many more fights do you think we have in Crawford? He's 36.
So I
top of his game.
So the wild part of my job here at Omaha is I've gotten to know Bud and his whole crew. Yep. Thing to keep in mind, and we know the tactician part of this will be on display. Bud hasn't fought in nearly a year.
I know.
I mean, it's been a while since Bud Crawford has fought, but he will he'll go out to Colorado, get himself in shape and all that, and making the jump up. And he's also got the chip on his shoulder because no one wants to fight him. That's the problem. Is Bud has probably got 3 more fights left. I mean, it's not like he's getting younger. You know, he's starting to get up there in age, and he can't wait that much longer. And it would be a real shame. But I'm glad that this has been talked about for a couple of weeks, and I'm glad they finally be able to put it together. It doesn't move the needle where you go, whoa, but it's Bud's fighting again, and thankfully, it's just, you know, he's what, 35? So I would 36. Say probably 36. So I would say about 3 more fights in his career after this one would be max.
Sure.
Yeah. It should be noted.
Go out the undefeated pound for pound best ever.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be people would chase him, and he would be able to set up these great fights. Now he has to chase others to go fight. That's ridiculous.
It's the area you're in, man.
Yeah. Well, hey, enjoy this weekend, by the way. So everything comes together. We got the Kentucky Derby at 5:57 today. Don't be late for that. It is May the 4th be with you.
Yep.
It also is Cinco de Mayo, and we got a Canelo Alvarez fight as well this weekend.
Whew. And don't forget Nuggets Timberwolves game 1 tonight. I'm going to be out camping. My phone's going to be off, so nobody spoil that game for me. I'm going to try to catch it tomorrow morning. So, go Nuggets.
Well, no. You're a diehard Nugget fan.
Yep.
How can you avoid? This is one of the best.
Why are you going camping for the love of God?
It's about taking care of myself, Schmitty. And sometimes in life, you got to disconnect and get out and sit around a campfire, drink some beers with some good people.
Okay. And I didn't know if you were camping solo.
No. I've thought about it, but that's not this weekend.
He's also going to pick up a hitchhiker.
Yeah. Okay.
Hey, what if? Quick one here. What if you ran? Would you rather run into a man in the woods or a bear?
A man. I've seen this discussion.
Oh.
Yeah, this is a discussion that needs to be talked about more because.
Whoa. What's even the debate here?
What's scarier? What's more?
Dude, people in the woods are scary though. Because you never know why somebody's just hanging out in the woods.
Right.
I think you're more likely to be killed by a man because he's wondering, what are you doing in the woods? And so there's going to be a defense mechanism where if a bear is coming my way, I got 2 options. A black bear is scared of me. Okay, a black bear is scared of a dog. If it's
what type of bear are we talking about here?
I watched The Revenant. I'm scared of grizzly bears.
Yeah, I don't need to be around a bear.
That's you got to make yourself tall. Okay.
He's fine. We're not.
Yeah.
We're going to clip that.
Now, all things are off if the bear has cubs, because then you're done.
Yeah, you are absolutely
okay.
I read this horrific story of this guy that accidentally got in between a mama bear and her bear cubs, and he was completely mauled and had to walk his way off like the top of this mountain. And he got back to his car and he was blinded. He the picture of him in the hospital afterwards, he's unrecognizable with how he got mauled. He had to drive in his truck on the roads and couldn't see anything. He was blinded, so he was just trying to keep the truck straight, and eventually finds a family who's able to call the police. And it was don't. That was the terrifying one to me. If you don't want to be between a bear and her cubs, I don't know.
Watch Small Town Murder, my friends. You'll change your opinion.
Hear me out. Thank you, Google. American black bears have been observed. 120-pound black bear. All right, so we're talking about, think about a 120-pound person, small person, right? 120-pound black bear observed turning over flat rocks weighing 325 pounds with one hand, arm, leg, whatever you call it. 320 pounds. They're just boom, at 120 pounds. And you want to go against that?
Vic in Denver.
Vic. Not worried either way.
But you know what? There was nobody around when the bear did that.
So how do we know it's true?
Bears, oh man, just one slap and you're flying across the forest into a tree.
Then he
dude, what's he gonna do? Come on.
You don't get a little nervous when you're at Fontenelle Forest and you're on a path and you're a single guy and here comes another single guy? But you might die.
You just nod and keep walking.
They may pull a Dahmer on you.
That's usually when I go like this, right? I just have it ready. You just have one knuckle ready. This is the one equalizer that humans have against anything. Land one of these to an eyeball, you're in good shape.
Kraynak puts his run the damn ball head on.
No one's gonna mess with me and my tiny pocket knife. I tell you what.
Whoa!
A black bear would be like. Psst.
No, and I do feel like this conversation changes depending on locale. Like, it's one thing to run into a bear/man in Colorado. Like, okay, like I'd probably rather run into the man. If I'm at Ruby Ridge, I'd probably rather run into the bear.
Oh, right. It does depend on location.
We just had a Ruby Ridge reference on this show.
Yeah.
Good on you, Elijah.
Never forget.
Yeah.
Take a firearm.
And people wonder, what are you guys going to talk about in the off season?
By the way, same with mountain lions. You know how they always come out.
I'm done. We're not talking about freaking animals anymore.
We
wrap
are.
this bastard
Just
up.
real quick, mountain lions. Like, what are you supposed to do if a mountain lion comes at you? You're supposed to get big and approach it. Like,
or not go camping.
It's just like, if that thing calls your bluff, man.
Yeah. Hey, Elijah, enjoy the glamping today.
Schmidt, you would not believe the type of just stress relief you can get by a night out in the woods underneath the stars around a campfire with some buds and some beers and some dogs. Like both dogs and hot dogs, both.
Back patio, fire pit, smoker, I'm good.
Yeah. By the way,
it's not the same.
Just
70-inch.
How many here have a Blackstone and have been working with Blackstone flat top grills?
I don't have one, but I've been thinking about it.
It's time. I just broke one in last weekend, put some burgers on there. Top 5 texture all time of any burger I've ever eaten in my life, and I didn't even know what the hell I was doing.
You smash it?
It wasn't even a smash.
The best
wasn't
thing
even
is,
a smash.
The best thing is the quantity of food you can make at once is one of the best things on a Blackstone. Like breakfast skillet or fried rice or burgers. Like, what would take 4 or 5 to feed a family? Like, oh, you're making omelets? Okay, we're going to make 5 omelets individually. You can just make a big old thing of scrambled eggs on the Blackstone, and it's all ready in 5 minutes.
It's truly a game changer, Chris. I know you are a man of many grills. You're a man of many techniques. You've gone smoker. You've gone infrared. You've gone.
I have the smoker. You know. I'm on round 2 of the infrared.
Yeah.
Last night did a 2.5-inch thick New York strip, 12 ounces, medium rare, perfection.
Yeah.
Did kebabs for the bunny, and it was awesome. I mean, it's old hat. Sharpie's computer is dead, so he has had to check out. So,
well, we thank Gary Sharp for joining the weekend edition of Hail Varsity Radio.
For sure. We love Sharpie. Average Joe pod possibly this weekend as well. But no, I might get one. And my smoker's about 10, 12 years old. It's a Pit Boss. I haven't done much on there, but you've been over, Kraynak, Elijah, you've been over. I love those rare road games we're not going to do a show from and Nebraska loses. I love having people over for a fall night game where you put beef short ribs on or your normal baby backs or St. Louis style ribs and smoke them for a few hours, pour a drink, and roll the TV outside of the patio. And it's a glorious college football fall Saturday.
Let me just real quick stump for what I have. And you can do different sizes. Blackstones come in all kinds of different sizes. But think about this. It's a 22-inch, right? 2 burners, so 2 heat zones.
That's good.
And it's portable. You can take it somewhere. But in terms of like size, like cooking surface area, you know the big skillet, like inside you got your little tiny skillet, you got your normal size skillet, and you got your big skillet. Just in kind of compare, it's about the equivalent of like 3 of those, 3 of the big skillets. It's the math probably isn't exactly right there, but pretty close.
I get you.
So you can do a good, 12 to 16 burgers at a time. You can do pancakes, eggs, and anything you would cook inside. And I'm just telling you I don't know what it is. I don't understand it, but the difference in flavor and texture is absurd.
What was the seller for me was the Oklahoma road trip in 2021.
Yeah.
And Uncle Andy, my brother-in-law, brought his portable.
Yeah.
Blackstone. Is it Blackstone, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And we had normal brats, but they were anything but normal. They were the best brats ever because he put them on a flat top.
Yeah.
I put brats for 100 years on my grill. I've boiled them in beer, and they're good. They're really good. These were excellent because of the flat top, and they were the best things I've ever had in my life. They were so good.
One more thing you can do. At home hibachi, people can bring around sake to you to pour into your mouth. I'm just letting you know. Yeah.
See?
Does
do that.
That reference went over Mark's head. I don't think he's seen that video.
You got to send him the Elijah Herbel tours and travels.
The mistaken Saturday morning tweet.
That'll be
just a general comment, and I was like, yeah, that sounds good.
That'll be it for us.
It was
Mark
awesome.
Kraynak, Elijah Herbel. Get to the sports book and enjoy your weekend. Chris Schmidt. Make sure you subscribe and download the podcast Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Like and subscribe there. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play for the digital/audio edition as well. And like and subscribe and give us a review that way. We'll talk next Saturday and back at you Monday on Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.